Right now, I'm going to show y'all how to all go into the Smart Fund. You should be added to the Smart Fund. You should have got an email about that. And you just click on the email. It should take you to this page. You should be able to see all these different folders. Now, in order to find the sector report template, it's pretty easy. You just go all the way down here to Operations. Then you go to the sector report template right here. Double click it, and then it should be this one right here. Now, when you click on it, it's important that you make a copy. So we can just go back here, right click it, and then um, make a copy. Your lead analyst should be the one that does this. It's not too big of a concern, but just make a copy and don't use the original because the original one has all our information on it. So once you've made a copy, it will create one real quick. As you can see, it just popped in. I think it's this one. Let me see the name. Yeah. So this will be your copy. You can then rename it to whatever you want. So I'm just going to call this one the test, but yours will be consumer discretionary or whatever you're working with. Then once you've got this down, you can then start working on it and filling out the information that you need to put in there. Now on the actual template though, the one that you're not going to be making anything on, if you scroll down for each of the different parts of information that you need to get, we have some comments that follow with it. So if you click on this part that's highlighted, like the definition, so for this one you'd be trying to figure out what the definition is, you can see that Garrett posted here that it says data can be found on IBIS World. And so let's give that a shot. Now, for IBIS, you go to southern.edu. We all have access to this. If you've taken a writing class, it's found in the McKee Library section. So once you go to My Access, you go down here where it says Bookmarks, and then you go to McKee Library. Then you go to Databases, the third tab down. After that, you can just go on the right here and search up IBIS. Not too difficult. Then IBIS World. Then after that, if we're just going to use healthcare as our example. You can just search up healthcare. And then right here, healthcare and social assistance in the US, click it. And it takes you to an article that they write on it. So you can see the industry definition is right here. Now, I would get a bigger one personally from Bloomberg. I'll show you how to do that right now. You just Once you log into Bloomberg, it should come up with three panes. You can use any one of the panes. Just type up here in this blue bar right here. Um, we're just going to look up healthcare and search it up. So as you can see, it pulls up some random information, but we're looking for a definition. So what we can do for that is just go to this More tab in um, it's to the right of all these gray tabs, and then you can look for definition right here. And then we got a definition. So we can click on any one of those. You can see that one's a little shorter. Um, we try to look for the healthcare sector ones. Those typically have more information. So as you can see, this is a pretty lengthy one. So for your sector report, I would just go through this, find the information that's important, and you can just kind of trim it down to what you would want to present as just a small, just brief definition. So, you would just copy like this, or you might just copy only that section, and then you might go down here and be like, oh, this is important, and you just copy this little part. For Bloomberg specifically, if you're copying, you have to hold down the highlight. Like if I let go right now with the mouse, it just goes away. So if you want to copy and paste something, you just have to hold the highlight and then do Control C. So that's how you get the definition. Then moving on to market cap ratios, you can see we have another comment right here. If you just click the highlighted stuff, it pulls the important comments that are linked to it. So you can see right here, and this is again on the SMARRT report template, not the copy of the templates that you guys made. It's only on the original template. Just as a reminder, if you guys find easier ways to do things, be sure to leave a comment on the template on an easier way to do it. Just try to make it brief and simple so that people, if they're trying to do these, can find them. So for the market cap ratios, this part is we deal with one of these pie charts, and the way we do it, or we've been doing it, is since all these are linked to uh, that first initial report, what you're going to do is on your copy, you're going to click it, and then you're going to go click this little arrow in the right hand corner, which says open source. It brings up this sheet right here, and then you'll input the data into the following subsectors, as you can see right here. So I can put like 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then it makes the pie chart for you. You can also put the different names of your sectors as well. So it can be like biotech, pharma, medical, those rest of the things. Now, where to find this information? We can see right here it says once data has been put into Google Sheets, you must unlink the pie chart. That's important for this, and I'll explain why in a moment. There's two ways you can find this. I suggest using the Bloomberg way. If the Bloomberg doesn't work, then you can use Fidelity, which just uses this link, but I'll show you guys how to find it on Bloomberg. So right here it says on Bloomberg, use the ICS, which anytime in these comments when we do capital letters like this, it's one of two things. In this first instance, IBIS is just that website like I showed you earlier. In this second instance, ICS is a command on Bloomberg. So we're just going to minimize this for now, and we're going to type in this blue bar right here, ICS. Now, you can see right here it has a ton of different stuff, but we're just going to go with this first one where it says classification browser. We click that, and it pulls up this screen. Now, as you can see, we have all of our sectors. And so going on with healthcare, we can just click on healthcare right here. You might not think it does too much right there. You might not have noticed anything, but if you look to the right, we got all this information. And with that information, it tells you the market cap right here is 13.12 trillion. Now you're asking like, oh no, I only have the market cap for the total thing. What about the little tiny individual things? Well, we click this plus sign, and then we click it again. And now we got our little tiny subsectors. We can click on each one of these. It'll load the data. So you can see for biotech and pharma, we got 7.18 trillion. Um, Healthcare facilities and services, 3.03 trillion. And medical equipment and devices is 4.86 trillion. So you'll just go for each one of these and you will enter in the data on this little tiny pie chart in the sheet part. So it might be like 7 trillion, whatever it was, like 14 trillion, 2 trillion, and then the rest of the market is can be found out one of two ways. I think the easiest way of doing, or not the easiest, but just one of the simpler ways is you can just click on all this stuff and you can just add up all the market caps for that. Although you could also just as easily go to Fidelity. It might work. I'm not sure if the numbers are the same, but you can see the total market cap in maybe the weightings. Uh, Not sure on that one. I would just add them all up. It's not too bad. You don't have to use a calculator. You can just like enter in the numbers. So if one's like 12 and you just keep going, and then you just use a sum function at the end. So you do equals sum, then that, move up to the top cell, then put in a two dots. I don't know what it's called, semicolon or something like that. Just put it, no, put it down to like A12 or wherever it's at. And then it'll sum it all for you. I don't know what I just did wrong, but whatever. Oh, I was referencing itself. Forget about that. Just sum it all. You can do that pretty easily. Once you have those numbers, you can input it all in there, and it's not too bad. Um, so that's how to get the market cap. The next part is, oh yeah, important. After you're finished inputting all your data, you go back over here to your pie chart in your actual sector report. You then hit this update button. So you can see it just updated to what the pie chart was over here. Now, once you've gotten all the data and you've confirmed that it's all correct and stuff, then you're going to want to do this. You're going to want to hit the this button up here in the top, and then you're going to hit unlink. So once it's unlinked, you can't make any changes to it. That being said, don't think it's the end of the world if you accidentally made a mistake. You can just insert another pie chart, um, then go to pie chart, and then after that's done, you can just re-input the data, and it's not too bad. The reason you unlink the data is because since we're all working off these same sheets, a lot of the sources are the exact same. So if I change my source, then you you go to your sector report and it'll have your pie graph will have changed. So that's kind of the reason that we have to unlink everything. If you want to just when you get in there delete your entire pie graph and insert a new one, that's fine too. Whatever works. Then moving on to the next step is the top 10 firms in the sector, which is just a screenshot. You don't actually have to enter in anything special for this or like calculate anything. So let's click on the highlighted part to see what our comment says. It says filter by descending industry revenue, and then it says the ICS function. So let's go to Bloomberg. We'll just enter it in again, ICS. And then we'll click on our industry, which is healthcare, and now we're looking for the top 10 firms by descending industry revenue. And so if we go over here, we go to we see this list of companies. These are our top 10 firms. And if you want to get it by descending industry revenue, which it happens to already be in, you would just look at this and make sure that arrow's pointed down. So as you can see, this one's the highest amount and it goes lower here. If you had it to ascending, it would go up and it would be like that, but we want to keep it as descending. So keep it like that, and then very simply just open up snip, or if you have a better way of doing this, I'm pretty slow, just hit the snip button, hit new, and then something like that. Makes sense? Not too bad. You just insert the picture after that. No, don't save it. Um, that's how you get that. You just would delete this and then you would insert it yourself. So moving on to the next thing is a performance chart of the S&P versus the sector. This part is a little bit more difficult, but let's see what it's got to say. Um, oh yeah. One important thing that I just forgot about the top 10 firms in the sector. So with this comment, it says for the top 10 firms in market cap, make sure you filter by North America and the United States. So that's pretty easy to do. All we do is go up here. We're still in healthcare, so we would go filter by um, North America and then region United States. And then it's pretty much the same list, but sometimes it'll change depending on whether there's some companies from other nations. Moving on to the performance chart, it says search the security and then click GP function and click edit and add your next security. So for the S&P 500, that is SPX. You just search that up in the top blue thing again. And then to find your sector, that's a little bit more difficult. Personally, the way I found it is I just look up the spider fund for my industry, which let me see how I do that. I think you search up ETF to get a list of all ETFs. Yeah. And then if you're looking for the ETFs within your sector, which is what I use to find the comparison, you go select criteria, then classification, industry, deselect all these, add the sector that you have. We're going to use healthcare. Then you want to search for the spider fund. That's just a broad spectrum spider fund, like this one right here. Spider funds are just the ones that say SPDR. Click on it, hit des to get the description, or I think you can easily go to the graph from here, but I forgot how to do it. So you would go to look for the index that it's using, which in this case it's the IXVTR. A lot of these ETFs are based off of indexes, so they might have all their holdings, but the way that they benchmark these ETFs is by comparing it to an index which is made up arbitrarily by some bigwig in a suit. And so just look up what this little tiny ticker is. I would get a sticky note, just bring one in here. and then you can save the name of the ticker. So for this one, even though the ETF is called XLV, we're looking for the index to compare the sector versus the S&P 500. So ours would be IXVTR. So just keep that in mind, and then we go back to the S&P 500. So SPX. Go to the line chart. Then to add another data set on here, we will add the index that we just got. So ours is IXVTR. Just remember that IXVTR. And you can see it says healthcare select sector, whatever that means. But that's basically how we get our comparison. And then to make this chart look good, you can click the lines either up here to highlight them, or you can click them individually. This is easier. You just do that. And then to switch the 1 to 5 year, you can just click on the differences for whatever it tells you to do. If it's a 5 year, keep it there. If it's a 1 year, switch it back. If you want to switch the colors, you can. Um, you'll just do another screen grab like I showed you using the snippet. Then you'll throw it up here. It's important to highlight the lines on the graph because as you can see with this one specifically down here, only the green line is highlighted and these other lines they're not highlighted, so they're not as poppin'. So when you're doing a presentation, like we'll all be looking at the screen and it'll be kind of dim in there, but like not dim enough to see the rest of these lines. So we'll really just see that big green line and we won't see the other ones. So if you highlight them, it allows us to see everything pretty easily. Then another thing, which you don't have to do, but I like to do it just because it looks good, is you can highlight what each of the graph points is. So for this, the S&P is green, so I would just highlight this as being green. So I'd go over here to highlight and then just throw the green on. So just to make it simple, so when you're looking at this, you're like, oh, S&P 500, and then that's green, so you're like, okay, line green, ooga booga, like caveman style. So the industry in this one will be purple, so you can just do that too. Make it purple or pink or whatever color it is. Trying to make it work if you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to do that. I think it looks nice though. Moving on, so I've shown you guys how to get the graph. We go to sector fundamentals, lead indicators, drivers, trends, risk factors, and the whole thing. Right here, if we click on it, we can see the Garrett says all this can be found on IBIS World. And so we go back to IBIS like I showed you earlier, and we can go back to our healthcare sector. So we can just go to the About page, gives us the industry definition as well as a ton of information. Almost everything can be found on here, and if you can't find this stuff, you can try searching it up on Bloomberg, or you can just try searching about up on like Fidelity or any of those banking sites, and a lot of times they have good information. Specifically for the lead indicators and drivers and stuff, we do actually have that information on IBIS, which is pretty handy because a lot of times that can be the difficult things to find. So I think if we go down to one of these, yeah, key external drivers. So we click that, takes us to it in the IBIS report. You can see right here we got 5 of them things. We got federal funding, um, total healthcare expenditure, number of people with private insurance, national unemployment rate, and the number of adults age 65 or older. So you can summarize these into like a sentence or two and list them as a driver in your report. Now, the interesting thing with the drivers that you guys should keep in mind is we don't just want to know what the drivers are, we want to know what the drivers are currently doing. So it's one thing to be like, oh yeah, we know what's driving the industry, but we also want to know what that thing that's driving the industry is doing right now. So for the healthcare sector, we would be like, we want to know the number of adults that are age 65 and higher. Is that growing? Is it getting smaller? Just stuff to let us have a better insight into the inner workings of it. So once you have these lead indicators and drivers, make sure to look them up, whether it be on Bloomberg or just on the internet in general, to see what they're actually doing so you can have a better grasp on where the industry is going. For the risk factors and industry weaknesses and project evaluations, that should be all on IBIS somewhere within these little tiny things. You can also search them out online, as well as Bloomberg, I believe, has stuff too for it. So if we search up healthcare, there's typically, I think, think we would go to news if that's one of these. Yeah, right here. So you'd go to news, and then it'll have a ton of news, and you can just read through some of it if you find anything that's worth mentioning, and it can help out giving some of these reports. So, like some of the um, risk factors and industry weaknesses get shown up a lot of the time. Same with the project evaluations. A lot of times, Bloomberg has analyst reports where they like give their 2 cents on whether they think the industry is going to go up or down. So you can use that as well. Again, to find that stuff, you can go to news as well as some other stuff like research and stuff like that. So you can just click all and you'll be able to see all these different news reports. A lot of them can be from different companies or from like industry insiders, so a lot of it's good stuff. Moving on in this report to relevant sector news. Same place you found the other stuff, you can just go to this news part, or if you find stuff in headlines, uh, it actually ranks the top news for you. So a lot of times these three things are some of the more important stuff, but keep in mind that the news shouldn't just be short-term stuff like, oh, today in healthcare news, like we found like one cure for cancer. Like that's nice, but we're trying to think about this in terms of like 6 months to a year's worth of time. Because here at Smart, we typically do biannual war room sessions where we choose when we want to invest stuff. And so just keep that in mind that like short-term plays is not really what we're looking for. We're looking for stuff with at least 6 months to a year worth of like potential in it. Moving on to the next stuff, sector or industry analysis is more of the same type of stuff. So uh, this should be for each one of the industries within your sector. I'll show you how to find those industries real quick. So we just go to ICS like we did a while back. Then we go to healthcare or whatever your industry is, hit the plus sign. Some of these have a lot, some of these don't. For healthcare, you have to hit it twice, and then you'll see we got biotech, pharma, healthcare facilities. But for other ones, sometimes they're grouped differently. Like industrials can be grouped either into just industrial products or industrial services. But you can see if we click on the plus sign, it can be further pushed out into other stuff. How in depth you want to go depends on what your lead analyst will say. Some of these things, like to do all of these, that would take way too much time. So I would just kind of try to lump it into industrial products and services, and then from within that, kind of just explain what makes it up and what the biggest driving factors are. If you want to know how to determine the what's the biggest part of some of these industries, you can just click it by market cap. And so you can see like that one's 86 or 800 billion versus like this one's 1 trillion. So you would just be like, well, which one makes up the majority of it? And then you could kind of figure that out. So that's how you figure out what your industries are. And for each one of these, for instance, healthcare, it's got three sub industries in it right here. So it's got biotech, healthcare, facilities, and medical equipment. So in this, you would have to copy and paste the industry analysis 3 different times, and then you would start entering in data for each one of them. The sector definitions and overviews, again, are pretty easy to find. You can either do those through how we've done before, which is just searching them up on Bloomberg, or you can find those a lot of times on Fidelity as well. Now, with these graphs, it's the exact same thing. You just go to Sheets, and then you enter in that data once more, and then unlink it after you're done. Since you're copying, pasting in this all, it's incredibly important to unlink it because when you copy this 3 times, it's going to be this same graph 3 times. And so once you get your data, you need to unlink it. Otherwise, it'll be the same graph 3 times. But once you unlink it, then you can have multiple graphs. You just won't be able to change them. If you want, you can also just insert a new graph each time so that you can change the data on the fly. That works too. Then for the top 10 firms within the specific industries, that's on ICS as well. So we would just click one of these. Let's go with biotech and pharma. You can see here are the top 10 companies, but don't forget to filter it by North America and the United States. Then you would just do a little snip, do it for the first top 10 by descending industry revenue, throw it up there, and then you do the industry versus the S&P 500 on a 5 year. This part is the exact same way we did it for the other one. So you'll have the industry versus the S&P versus the sector as a whole. And to do that, we already know how to get the S&P. You just search up SPX, and we already know how to get the individual sector. But these industries can be a little bit more difficult. So we'll try searching up biotech and pharma real quick. See what comes up. And then a lot of the times, one of the easy ways to find an index for a specific industry is to just go to this more function, and you'll see this index and stats. So we will go to, um, let's see, let's try equities. This is what typically takes me forever to do because I always forget it every semester. I don't know how to find the indexes. Give me a second. Let me see if I can find something. Okay, so I just clicked the index button once I got there, and after that, you'll get a huge list here of different indexes. You can see that the categories index slash stats, so these will all be indexes, and then you can just search through them and try to find one that suits your category. Since we're doing biotech and pharma, I wouldn't use this one. This one's kind of odd. Let's just search up biotech or pharma with it, and we'll see. So, biotech and pharma. This would be your best bet to just kind of search through these and try to find one that suits yours. If it just says shares outstanding like this, I don't think that's a completely accurate way to figure things out. Um, a lot of times too, you can go back and see what past people did. It's not a sure bet because it's not saying that they did things correctly, but sometimes you can get lucky. So I would go to VP of operations for this, and then go to the try to go to the most up-to-date sector reports. So this would be for the false 2021 sector reports. And let's see what past us did. Okay, time to just blow that up completely. So we did MXU SOPB. S0PB. Watch out, some of these tickers have zeros instead of O's, so just keep that in mind when you're searching things up because you might get spooked by it. And then you won't be able to find your ticker. Let's try that out. So just delete that and then MXU S0PB. Maybe it was an L. MXU SOPB. Alright, this is killing me. Alright, well, that works. So you could just search that up. It says MSI, biotech pharmaceutical. You can look at it. It'll tell you what it is. This one is a Pharmatech and Biotech Life Science Index. It's the market cap, weighted index, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes these aren't completely accurate. Like this one isn't the perfect index. I would really just try to go back to the index finder and see if you can find something useful. Um, a lot of times too, another way you can find it, it depends on how many ETFs are in your sector, but you can just search up ETF, go to criteria, and then go to the classification, industry, click your industry right here. So we go to healthcare. Then if you go out here, you could try searching up like biotech within here. And then it shows biotech ETFs. Now, right here, we have another spider fund. If you get lucky and you got one of these spider funds, you can click it and then go to the description. And then as you can see right here, it's got another index, which this one is the SPSIBITR. So let's see what that is. Yeah, so this is an S&P for the biotech select industry. And this is kind of like an if you're lucky thing. If you're lucky, sometimes your sub industry will have a spider fund for it, and you can use the index that it uses. Other times you'll have to search it up using just like how we did earlier. So you'd have to just go for biotech, and then you would just go to index and stats. Then you would go to like equity or funds or something like that, and you would just start searching them up. So this is probably one of the more difficult parts to find. If you have trouble, do your best or try to come to one of us to see if we can help out. Some of these things are hard to find, so just keep that in mind. Moving on, after that, you'll add that to the graph. Make sure to highlight all of them, and then if you want, you can highlight these up here to make it easier to read. To highlight the lines on the graph, you just click each one of these little names up here. Then it's again, you find the lead indicators and drivers and trends for all of these. So we would go back to IBIS World for that stuff, and we would just search up a new thing. So we would go to biotech, and then we can go right here. Gave us a simple and easy report to look at. We would go to out. It's got Outlook right here. That's another one that we were looking for earlier. You can go for the external drivers right here, and since this is just biotech and it's not the pharma, since they are lumped in as one, we can search up pharmaceuticals. I'm not sure how to spell that, but we got this one right here. Let's just try it out. So you could just kind of combine the information that you get from these two reports and then put it in there. Again, sometimes you're not going to be able to find exactly what you're looking for, but you can kind of reach around and find what you need. Moving on to what's after this. So after this, once you've done that for however many industries you have, we can move on to the ETF list. Right now, it has green as being the recommended, so I would leave that one blank until you've done all your research and kind of figured out what you're feeling is best for the sector. You don't always have to have a recommendation that we be invested in the sector. Sometimes it's a bad time to be invested in the sector, like specifically for I think real estate last semester we chose not to be invested in it. So just keep in mind that it you don't have to find or you don't have to recommend that we invest into a sector. I would still try to have a recommendation if we were to go in a sector, but again, you don't have to have a recommendation. Like if you strongly are against the idea of us being invested in the sector for from what your research has presented, then you can recommend that. Um, with that being said, even if you are feeling that way, I would have a like backup recommendation in case the team is feeling like they really want to be in your sector for whatever reason. So the green one is what you're recommending. So if that's like the ticker's XLV, you would just put that there. Uh, the blue one is for the top two ETFs by market cap. So we just search up ETF real quick and we go to select criteria, classification, industry. Since we're messing around with healthcare, we'll continue with that, update it. And then for the top one by market cap, it's already got that as the top one. It's just this class asset. And so you can see that these are the two top ones. You can switch it around to have it be the ticker or the name. I like to have it as the name, but you would just put in this one, which is XLV, and you would put in the other one, which is VHT. So we would go back here and we would enter in XLV and VHT. And then you would start entering in all this stuff. So this is the ticker, this is like the little letter combination, and then the actual name is pretty obvious. It's, just this thing. So for the Spider Fund, it would be Healthcare Select Spider Fund, and then for the other one, it'd be Vanguard Healthcare ETF. So after that, you get to the price. So to get all this information that we're going to be using for this table, you go to description, and then I believe we have a ton of comments on where to find most of the information. For the price, it's right underneath the graph. You'll see it right here. So you would just find whatever the price is, and for now it's 130. These things are subject to change though. For some of you guys doing the earlier presentations, your prices will be different by the time we get to the war room, but for now, XLV is trading for I think 130.09 or something like that. Is that what it said? Yeah, 0.79. So you would enter in the price, then you'd enter in the Sharpe ratio next. It has a comment. So you'd come over here, click it, and then right here it says Gray Performance tab, absolute measure, 1 year. So let's try to figure out what that means. It said Gray Performance tab. Up here we got tabs. This one says Performance. We'll click it. And then it said absolute measure 1 year. We look around at the top things. We see relative measure dividend. Oh, but we're looking for absolute measure. Here it is. And then we go down three. Voila, we got the Sharpe ratio. So you would put in 1.41 because that's what the ETF says. Don't put in this far right number. That's for the actual index that it's tracking. We're using the ETF. So you would enter in 1.41 for the Sharpe ratio. You'd move to one of these P functions. So for only one of these is highlighted because you find them in the same place. So we'll click on PB and you can see it says look up ETF allocation tab and then holdings analysis. So let's see what that says. It said allocation tab and then holding analysis. So we look around, we see top industry, top geograph, holding analysis, looks like it, and then we would go down here, we see PB and PS, PE, and PC. For the PCF one, that's really just PC, price to cash flow versus price to cash flow, so don't be alarmed, it's the same thing. You would just enter in these numbers. Keep in mind, sometimes they don't have those numbers because the ETFs are weird. And so if it doesn't have those numbers, don't feel bad about it. But typically, for the most part, they should have them unless it's like a weird specific industry. But for the price to book ratio, it's 5.07, so you would enter that in right here. For the price to cash flow, it's that PC, so that's 15.81. You would enter it in right there. For the 1 year, 5 year changes, the beta and the 1 year, those are pretty easy to find. You go up here to performance, and then right here is where you got that data. So this is the 1 year, this is the 5 year, this is the year to date. 1 year and year to date are different. Don't use the year to date. Year to date just measures, I believe, from January 1 up to whatever day it is currently, versus 1 year is from 1 year of today. So that would be uh, in our for today, it's the 20th for me. So that would be January 2021 versus January 2022. So just keep that in mind. Use the 1 year, the 5 year, and then if it asks for year to date, add that too. So those can both be found again on the performance tab right here and then just under this. And he uses this left side number rather than the right side because the left side one is our ETF versus the right side, which is the index. After that, you're going to be looking for the 1 year beta and the raw version of that. So you just go down here, relative measure, which says beta, and then you go to the raw 1 year. There's a 6 month one. Don't use that. Use the raw 1 year beta, which is 0.613. And you'll just enter that in right here. After that, we got another P function. Um, Again, all these P functions, you can just click on this PB one and you can see where it says. So look up ETF allocations tab and then the holding analysis. So allocations tab once again, and then holding analysis, which is down here. And then you can see that I think we were looking for PE, yeah, or price of sales. So price of sales is right here, 2.21. Enter that in. Earnings per share, let's see. I think earnings per share is the one that none of us are ever able to find on Bloomberg. Not really sure. Let's see what my past reports have said. Yeah, for earnings per share, we always just take that out, so forget about that one. Um, After that, we have the dividend yield, which can be found gray allocation tab, bottom left, holding analysis. So for the dividend yield, we stay here on allocations, and then we go down here to average dividend yield, and you can see it's 1.5, so you just put in 1.5. Pretty simple. Next, we go to the PE ratio, gray allocations tab, bottom left under holding analysis. Who would have guessed, right? We got the PE right here, 25.7. Easy as that. And last but not least, we got the expense ratio, gray profile tab, bottom right under characteristics. So profile tab, bottom right under characteristics. We got a ton of things to look at, but it said bottom right. So we see characteristics and then expense ratio. You can see it's 0.12%. So you just enter that in and you're good to go. After you've got all that filled out, we do have the summary. So for this part, you want to get whatever your recommendation is, which will be in the green right here. And then we're looking for the top 5 holdings of the ETF. So let's just try out one of our things. So this would be under holdings, and then you would see the top 5 holdings. So right here we have J&J, United Health Group, Pfizer, AbbVie, Thermo Fisher. So you'd put in all these, and then you would just put in their percentages. So this would be like 8.75%, another 8%, and then you would have one of these be just the other, like the rest of the ETF sort of thing, so that you can see how much the top 5 ETFs make for it. Because some of these ETFs, they have like a high weighting on like their first couple ones, and then the rest of them are pretty small, but other ones are pretty spread out. So it's just to see what like the breakdown is for the ETF. Again, since this is one of our pie charts, once you have all your data input, just update it and unlink the chart so that everyone else can make their own little chart. Then we get to the recommendation, which is summarized. You can see we have some instructions here. It should be bullet points of why you think we should be in this ETF, as well as the sector. Keep the market cap there, the average volume, inception date, and the ETF compared to the sector. So a graph, this is a mistake that we did. So like I said, we want to highlight these. So when we would make this graph, you can see that the lines are kind of harder to see, especially the blue one. We would just want to go over here and click these three lines right here, and then these would all be popping. After that, there's a 150 word explanation on why you'll be recommending that ETF. It should pretty much just be a shortened version of what you presented earlier. After that, you guys should be good for your sector report.